Well, hey everybody, as you heard a couple of times, we are having a special emphasis on this Disability Sunday. So churches across Texas are doing this. A lot of churches, hundreds, are doing this today to really kind of call a special emphasis on this. We're excited to jump in. We'll be in Psalm 139. We'll be back in James next week as we finish up the summer. But Psalm 139 today. I'll preach a very short sermon, even for me, okay? And then I want to bring up four of our best here in just a minute. Two families with children with special abilities. Just so you can hear from them, okay? And so, the reason that Christians have always led the way with lifting high the ethic of life is because that's who our God is. He cares about every life, and so we are pro-life. Enthusiastically, holistically, we are all made in His image, and so we're really proud to hold that ethic high. Look with me in Psalm 139, verses 13 to 16. David prayed, "For God, you form my inward parts. You knitted me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed substance. In your book were written, every one of them, the days that were formed for me, when as yet there were none of them. The grass withers and the flowers fade, but the word of our God will stand forever." A few years ago, a father, asked me, "Why did God make my son different?" His little boy had significant disabilities. He couldn't run like the other kids. He couldn't communicate the same way they could. Every milestone came later. Every day required extraordinary patience. And the father wasn't asking a theological question. He was asking a heart question, and maybe you've asked some version of that in your own life. Why did God make me this way? Why did I get this diagnosis? Why does my child struggle? Why doesn't my body work like everybody else's? So here in Psalm 139, it doesn't answer every why. It actually answers a more foundational question, which is, who made us? And if we can get that answer correct, if we can answer that question correctly, it changes how we see ourselves, yes, but also every person around us. And here, we feel a very sharp separation from the world. From ancient times until now, the God of the Bible has stood out from all the other gods of all the other religions as on the side of the powerless. Our God is on the side of justice for the poor. Early church father Tertullian in the 2nd century wrote of pagan practices that were, quote, choosing some of the cruelest deaths for their own children. Many in the Greco-Roman world, which is the audience of most of the New Testament, they would put babies and kids on the trash heap and just leave them there to throw away or for people to pick up and make into gladiators or slaves or prostitutes. But the church would go and get them and would welcome the children in, just as we follow our Savior who said, "Let the little children come to me." So John Stott, he writes, "It was a radical change, it being the way the church treated unwanted children or children with special needs. It was a radical change from the callous cruelty which prevailed in the Roman Empire, in which unwanted babies were abandoned, weak or deformed babies were killed, and even healthy children regarded as a nuisance because they inhibited sexual promiscuity and complicated easy divorce." You could say the same thing of our culture today. The Didache, written in the 1st century, said, "There are two ways, the way of life and the way of death." And so here, in Psalm 139, we get a view into God's workshop. You see there in verse 13. We don't see from this picture of Psalm 139, 13 to 16, an assembly line, just God kind of rushing things through. No, made without thought or care. No. Each formed, each knitted together. The verb knit there derives from a Hebrew word that describes an interweaving and intertwining God does while creating a human being. This translation choice captures something profound about God's creative process. Okay, it's not a simple molding or shaping, but an intricate interlocking of components. It's the picture of careful craftsmanship. Not mass production, but intentional design. Each one of you, each one of us, you weren't manufactured, you were handcrafted. Look at David's response to understanding this truth in verse 14. He says, "I praise you because I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it so well." So David doesn't understand this and then say, "God, I praise you because I'm successful. I praise you because I'm attractive. I praise you because I'm healthy. David's worth isn't rooted in his performance or in his talents. His worth is rooted in his Creator. Our culture says that your value comes from what you can do, what you can produce, but the Bible says your value comes from whose image you bear. That's a world of difference. Our culture often measures measures people by productivity. Can they contribute? Can they perform? Can they produce? The gospel asks an entirely different question. Whose image do they bear? And it's always the same answer. From Genesis 1:27, we are all made in God's image. Period, full stop, without exception, every person, always. And so then we come to the New Testament, right? We see Jesus consistently moving toward those in society that everybody else moved away from, people with leprosy and blindness and paralysis and deafness and mental suffering, all these things. Jesus never treated disability as a reason to avoid someone. You know, he treated people as image bearers, worthy of compassion and love, and sometimes he healed and sometimes he didn't. But he always restored dignity. There's this really important moment in John chapter 9. It says, as Jesus passed by, he saw a man blind from birth, and his disciples asked him, okay, teacher, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? A lot of assumptions in that question, right? And Jesus answered, that's not what's happening here. It was not that this man sinned or his parents, but that the works of God might be displayed in him. It's hard to overstate the importance of Jesus' answer here. There was this really widespread assumption and belief in that day that any sort of disability like this man had was the direct cause of sin. It's sort of like the idea of the doctrine of karma today. If you go anywhere where the doctrine of karma is the dominant worldview, it can be a pretty brutal place, because if you see someone in need, nobody feels any responsibility for that person. They think that's their fault. They're paying off a karmic debt from some life in the past, and so they're this way, they're in this position because of their own responsibility, so, have at it. It has nothing to do with me. And so that's kind of how they were thinking a little bit in that day. So in John chapter 9, they assumed this disability must be somebody's fault. But Jesus is like, no, that's not what's going on at all. So we live in a broken world, awaiting redemption, and disabilities are not evidence that someone bears less of God's image. And one of the things I love about preaching this small sermon this morning, I know we're on the same page about that. I know I'm preaching to the choir. But church, please hear me carefully. People with disabilities are not projects. They're not just interruptions. They're not just ministry opportunities. They're brothers and sisters and friends and image bearers. So I want to bring up our panel now. Y'all come on up. And so would you welcome with me, Jeffrey and Leisha Noblet and Chaz and Amy Jackson. Tell us about your journey, into being a parent of a special needs child. Leisha, why don't you start us off?
Hi, guys. We're so excited to be up here. In 2019, so we have 5 kids. So if you see the Noblet kids, those are all of our kids. 2 of them were on the spectrum, and in 2019, it finally got to a point with our son Cole where we knew something was going on. Truly, I'd known for years, but I was kind of in denial, but I also didn't know what to do or who to go to, but it got to a point where we were like, we got to get this checked out. So thousands of dollars later, many hours of testing, he was diagnosed with autism, and it was great because it was like, okay, we know what we're working with now, but also at the same time, we know what we were working with and how that would affect him lifelong. But then also during that time, so that was September 2019. Our youngest, Parker, was born March 1st of 2019, and as we're doing all this with Cole, I'm watching her development, and I was like, I'm crazy. I maybe I'm just making this up, but also just delayed development. A few words that she did have, she quit using them, and before I even told Jeffrey, because I was like, I'm going to wait to tell him what I'm seeing, I called my sister, and I was like, okay, I may be crazy, but I think this is what I'm seeing. And immediately she was like, yes, I'm seeing it too, because we also have a nephew with severe autism. And so it was just validating. Again, it's weird. It's like all these emotions in one. Yes, there's relief that, okay, I'm not as crazy as I probably am, but also, yes, it was to a point I felt like I had waited too long with Cole to where I was like, we have to do something for her now. So she was diagnosed at 18 months. She was in full-time therapy by 24 months. And so for the next 3 years, she was in 40 hours a week of therapy. Cole, we took him out of school in 2020 to focus on therapies. And then everybody was out of school in 2020. And then we church planted. And so that's our story. We're only 7 years in. And so I think if you talk to me in 7 more years, we may have something else to say. But that's how, that's our intro into the awesome disabilities world.
And I'll just give my perspective because it's very different than Leisha's. Was kind of in denial for a long time. One, because of my lack of knowledge, which is usually the case of autism, was a scary word for me at first, and I was like, no. So just as an encouragement, one of the things I hope this day brings out is, just like we're saying, if you see things in your family or someone else, or a family member, it's okay. It's not, our doctor said this is not a death sentence, and that just helped me go, okay, I just need to research this more. So for me, I didn't want my son to be labeled, but she was like, wait, it helps if he's labeled because we'll get access to all these things. So there was a lot of misunderstanding, which I think happens in this world, this world. So it was, once we got that, it did make everything a little bit easier in the sense of access, understanding how to help our son and our daughter the way they needed to be helped instead of just slapping a, generic something on there.
What about y'all, Jacksons? Same question. Tell us about your journey into this world.
Okay, well, we're the Jacksons. We've got our 3 kids, Zuri, Mila, and Nico. There we are. So we lived in North Carolina. That's where Chaz and I met. That's where our 2 girls were born at. We went to a church that the Kendricks were at. Then Matt and Chaz got together, as you guys know, talked about this vision. We moved out here. We always knew, we wanted another child, and just at what point were we going to make that happen? We don't have any family out here. It's just Chaz and myself. And we were like, okay, I think we're ready. I think we're ready to have another child. And during this time, we were church planning and really feeling the Lord, We're like, use us, God. Use us how you will, right? Like, I was 100% in. God, yes, whatever you want from me, like, I'm in it. And then we found out we were pregnant, and we did all the genetic testing, because I'm like, yes, like, we'll do it all. Found out we were having a boy. We were so excited we were having a boy. I am a nurse, so a pediatric nurse, and I always get worried, when you do the anatomy scans, no matter what, because that's, when you find out everything. And I've taken care of a lot of children and in all walks of life. And we did our anatomy scan, and it was a little bit abnormal. There were some abnormalities to it. And our OB was like, you know what, let's just send you to get a better scan. So we had already had some not great news. Wasn't the worst news we could have gotten, but I was going to work. I worked night shift at the hospital, and I'm like, Chaz, you don't have to come. Don't come. We already know the worst, and God's got us, and I'll just call you if anything happens. And I went in first thing in the morning on a Friday for that scan, and it was really long. It was a really long scan, and I was like, something's wrong because the scan's really long. And that's about all I remember, because the doctor came in and told us our son had an encephalocele, an occipital encephalocele. And for those of you that don't know what that means, it means that the brain is outside of the skull. It means that there's an opening in the skull and the brain matter can pass through that. And that's all. I was like, stop talking. Like, I've got to get my husband on the phone. So our next several months were just torture. It was just, he's going to be non-viable with life. He's going to pass away at any time. And you're just going to keep him until he does. If he makes it to birth, he'll die. if he can make it through a surgery, he won't live long past that. He'll have significant delays. He won't talk. He won't walk. Like, life is never going to be the same. So, lots of sadness, lots of anger, lots of emotions that we walked through. And then on June 23rd, that little boy said, "Oh, I'm ready." And if you know Nico at all, he does everything on his own timing when he's in the mood. And he came out crying, and he's been just nonstop since then. These are the first times these pictures we've ever showed them, ever. If you see that one on the far, that's his encephalocele. It was bigger than his head. That picture in the middle is us holding Nico on day 1 of life, right before he had his cranioplasty that they didn't think he would survive through. So this was my first time holding him, and possibly my only time, is kind of what we were told there. And then lots have happened since then. As you guys know, we have lots of therapies, lots of doctors, but when you see those pictures of him and what he is now, it's the complete opposite.
I will add that the morning that that Nico was coming, the plan was they were going to bring the girls to our house, and it was earlier than we expected. So 5 a.m. early in the morning, I'm like, "Courtney, is there somebody banging on our door?" And so I go to the front, and through our front window, he's like, "Hey, we need to," and I go, "We all have COVID." He goes, "Open the door." I'm like, "What are you talking? We got to come in." All right. So thankfully the girls didn't get COVID or anything, so everything worked out just fine. Chaz, were you going to add something?
Wow, the subject's heavy. I can tell you, my palms sweaty. In my head, I'm trying to hold in my tears as well, of been crying. But this God's faithfulness. That's right. I just want to sit there for a little bit as you see these pictures. You know, I vividly, when Amy called me, I left work, driving in my truck. The silence, the emotions, the emotional roller coaster, making it to her. Fast forward, getting to our house. We called Pastor Matt. He rushed over, and I remember just praying with him, like why is this happening? And so many times in life, we have our situations, circumstances, like, why me? You know, this diagnosis, statistics show 1 in 10,000 babies have it in the U.S. Like, why am I that 1 out of 10,000? Like, why God? Why me? And I think we constantly point our fingers at ourselves and at God. But fast forward into now, and you know, I can just see God's faithfulness through it all. And Nico doesn't even know, but he's actually brought people to Christ through his story. Like he has a ministry already and don't even know it at the age of 4 years old. So I know Amy, she summed up the journey real well, but I just really want everyone in this room just to kind of sit in that and know that in your pain, in your weakness, in your limitations that you don't quite understand, God is working in that. You know, we can easily see him in the good, but in the bad, that's when God really gets his glory. And he's continuing to get his glory through Nico's story. So
awesome, man. So what? Yeah. Praise God. What's something, and I'll kick it to y'all first. What's something that you wish everyone understood about families like yours?
So we feel this good weight of representing, because we don't have autism. Our family has 2 kids with autism, and so I feel like we're just now learning so much. And so these pictures I wanted to show because it represents what my son told me yesterday, and I didn't practice this like Courtney, so I'm sorry. I said, Cole, we're doing Disability Sunday tomorrow. what would you want people to know? And he said very plainly, just remember to be kind. He first said, tell him about my teachers, and I thought that was cool. Tell him about my teachers, which he means therapy. The therapy was amazing. His grandparents, one of them's here, Papa, crying too, has seen them grow. Shout out to Nana and Papa. They did not go to church and he doesn't care, but I'm going to say it anyway, maybe for like 2 years, because we were church planting, and that was how they served. And so that community that you see up there, Parker with Emily, Jonah with Cole, they met him that week, and they were just kind. That was the assignment. And there's something special about the autism community in particular, because I was listening to a guy, and he just kept using the word burden. I would just add a good burden, and I know that's what he meant, but as I was listening to what he was talking about, he just kept saying, just let people know, which is hard for special needs parents, share the burden with us, because it's a good burden. It's, Cole doesn't talk as much as Parker. Parker talks a lot, but there's this depth to Cole that he sees different sides of God than I do. He has this ease about him that I don't have. His faith is just, oh, well, why wouldn't we do this? Yeah. So, and then he has his struggles that are very sometimes, loud and prevalent. And so we don't try to mask any of that, but we do try to protect his dignity like we're talking about. And so I just wanted to ask him, because there's lots of stuff I could say, but to let them speak is usually what's taken away from them. And for autism, that is sometimes people speak on their behalf. And if we just sit with them, I love what you said, Chaz, about the faithfulness of God, but also just sit with these kids and adults and senior adults and just get to know them. It can be scary. I want to validate that feeling, because some people don't want to offend. You're not going to offend if your heart is open and you just treat them with kindness.
And I will add back to my stepdad right there. We always say that they were the first volunteers of Redemption City Special Abilities. So again, just everything Jeffrey said. I think, yes, we're like every other family. Sometimes we have more on our plate. And just like bandwidth of being able to say yes to things. Before kids, I would say yes to anything without even thinking, which was fun when we got married, because he is not a let's do everything kind of guy. But so that, we just our bandwidth. We want to say yes to all the things, but sometimes we just can't. So, yep.
Same question for y'all. What's one thing you wish you knew? But so just to make sure that everybody understands those pictures, they just went to a camp for families with special needs, special abilities, and it was such a refreshing time. And so that's something we'll be talking about maybe today, but definitely in the future, because that's what those pictures are. Same question for y'all.
One thing that I wish I knew that I didn't know, for some reason, our neurosurgeon is popping in my head, and she shared something that I feel like is fitting to share off of that question. Because before she shared it, for me, and I'm sure Amy probably agree, I was in my head about a lot of things. Online, there's so many million things and perspectives and ideas, and you Google and you see everyone else's story, and you're like, well, what if this happened with Nico, and what if this doesn't happen, and all of this, and she eased my heart with this statement when she said it. She said, Chaz, she said, let me worry about Nico's brain, and you worry about being a parent. Wow. Period. And I don't know, throughout the journey, obviously, there was still some anxiety, there was still some unknowns, there was still the worldly or the fleshly part of us happening, right? But this sinking my perspective of being his parent first, and not necessarily letting his diagnosis or his disability submerge my soul so much that it's blinding me from my other two daughters, or it's blinding me from being the husband to Amy. So that's something I wish I knew initially at the diagnosis, but it's something that I'm very grateful for discovering, and God using her to share with me, because they helped my soul get through it.
So, Amy, feel free to say more about that, but also I want you to be the first one to answer this one. So, of course, so the church should be the safest place for every person, especially people with special needs. But it's often not. I mean, one of the things Ms. Courtney mentioned earlier, but one of the things for a lot of families that stick with us that have, special needs, they say, we've tried churches, and we just don't feel like there was a space for us. And so we really want to be great at that. And then I'll say, too, of course, these being some of our founders, but, I told the partners last Wednesday that Cody Henson has nominated Chaz for the lead team. And so I think there's something to God has placed, these families as, leaders in our church. And so he's given us this opportunity for them to lead us and for us to really step toward this community in our city. And so, Amy, so back to the question I was trying to ask. So the church should be the safest place, but it's often not. And so how can we, the whole church, step toward that and make it a safer place for families with special needs?
I think that's a hard question because, it takes a lot for us to just get here, to just get in church in the morning. As you know, we're usually always late. We are never here on time. Sorry. But I'm so grateful that we have the special abilities class because before we had that class, we had Nico. And, we were still at the Y at that time. We couldn't make it through 2 services. Nico wouldn't go to anybody. He's crying the whole time. We're watching for all these things. Me and Chaz couldn't both help. It was either one or the other. And before, it was both of us, it was the girls, it was everybody helping. And we had to, okay, so this is our new life, but is church not a part of it? Can church not also be there? Because I can't go with Nico, so does Chaz just take the girls and then we flip-flop? Well, that can't be what God wants either, right? So Sunday after Sunday, we would figure out what we were doing, and then we got our special abilities class. And literally first day, Nico's in there, and he's just in there living his best little baby life because, there's people like Leisha that started it up that knows special abilities and knows things that you just don't have to say, you just know what to do, is so helpful. So I think something to know is every single day is hard for us. So meet us with kindness. If you see us coming in and we look frazzled, we are definitely frazzled. But that doesn't mean that you can't say hey to us or you can't, speak to Nico or speak to the girls who are usually left out because we're frazzled with Nico. So you can still speak. This is just how we look most of the time, just in this constant state of organized chaos. But I love now that we have our door that goes straight to kids. So now we always park there. We used to walk all through the church, as some of you know. We can't do that anymore. We come straight in. There's where the kids go. And that has been so helpful for Nico, especially on hard days, because we're just in, he's there, and then we can leave. And he doesn't have to see anybody else. He doesn't have to be, if we went mom first, class first, then mom. We say that a lot with Nico. Class first, and then mom. So it's from the car, it's supposed to be straight to the class, and you cannot stop him during that process. So that has made it a lot easier to go straight there. So just finding those little things that kind of work. And if you don't know, ask. Me and Leisha love to talk. So, amen. So you just got to ask us, hey, what's something that would work? There might be something that week that's different than all the other weeks that we've done. So if you don't know, just ask, but don't just stare. Ask, learn, want to be involved. That's all I got.
That's awesome. I need to wrap up. Any last words? Any last encouragements? I think it's really important to be reminded and understand that Sundays are more difficult and everything. There's just a couple extra steps, you know. And so, any other last words?
I think just to say what Chaz about just God's faithfulness. I think even if you don't live with anybody with disabilities or you yourself don't have disabilities, everyone's going to go through hard things. This journey has showed us that a lot of unexpected things have happened that we were not ready for. And I wish my relationship with God, you know, when people are like, I heard God tell me this. Rarely has that been my relationship with the Lord. It has been like, okay, here's some options. I'm going to pray that this is the right stuff. And through that, we have seen God's kindness in really hard situations. And so just to encourage anybody right now, you're like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what's next. Just, you know, God truly directs your path and he loves you. And, you know, so, yeah.
I have something.
Yeah.
I know that's hard to believe. You know, when I was thinking of our journey with Nico and everything we've been through, you know, I was so angry at the beginning. I was hurt, but I was so angry at God. Like, why is this happening to us, you know? And I was so angry that I missed his blessings. Every single one of them. And I'm so embarrassed that I even can say that. But I missed them all because I was mad. I didn't want to see them. I didn't care. And I missed every little blessing that God gave me along the way because I was just in this deep rut of just sadness. I couldn't see what God could see. You know, God says, just wait, Amy. Your story is going to be amazing. You just have to wait and trust in me. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. And God said, okay, it's still going to happen, but you're making yourself real miserable along the way. And now I look back and I'm like, oh, God, you're right. I really did make myself really miserable. I did miss all these little things that God was doing to prepare me and to prepare others for Nico. And I was too mad and I was too just zoned in on what was happening to me and to us and to our family that I couldn't think past that. So if anything, no matter what season you're in, of just like look for your blessings because they're going to be there no matter what your situation is, no matter how sad you are, no matter how horrible life seems at the moment. Just really just sit and say, what is God blessing me with right now? Because I guarantee you there's going to be something.
That's a word there. So, you know, I was telling Art earlier, there's this Japanese theologian, he has this word picture of when we enter into heaven. And you think about, sometimes we think we're going to see Jesus for the first time and he's go, I can't believe you didn't believe me sooner. I can't believe you looked at that, did that. What were you thinking there? That's what we think how he's going to welcome us. But this theologian, he pictures that moment. We enter heaven, we see Jesus face to face for the first time, and he goes, that was hard. You had a tough time here. Let me wash your feet. The banquet's ready. So for all of you today, we bring so many things into this room, and she's exactly right. You know, there are so many things woulda, coulda, shoulda, but Jesus offers you his grace and mercy and love right now. So let's enter into a time of response and prayer. So let's thank the panel for their time.